It's going to be a good one today as we get ready for more NBA action tonight. Mercifully, the Minnesota Timberwolves decided to extend that series so that we wouldn't be caught in a massive gap between the Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals, and the NBA Finals. So, Emerson, why don't you tell the rest of the people how we're going to fill this show today?
That's right. We're going to ask Minnesota beat writer Chris Hine if Anthony Edwards and the Wolves can secure Game 5 tonight and get back to Dallas. We'll get a WNBA plus a Yankees breakdown from Ryan Ruocco. Excited about that. And let's dive into some new look offenses around the NFL go, Joe. And speaking of new look, we got Senior back in the saddle again. How was the road trip, big dog? Here you're a Buc-ee's guy now.
Look at that. I am a Buc-ee's guy. I got the Buc-ee's shirt on. It's a wonderful, your mother had her first time going into Buc-ee's. We were in Missouri when this one happened. It was awesome. It was we started the road trip Sunday night and we made it in, what was it, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, late. So it was a good trip. A good trip. I'm glad your mother got to experience Buc-ee's. 26 hours in a Sprinter van with 3 dogs. One of which
you said it's a good trip, and then you kind of like faltered there. Was it actually a good trip? Mom's not a huge fan of this drive. You and Jake are more of the drive guys here, so it sounded like you waffled a little bit on that. Like maybe Mom didn't have the best time out there on 26 hours on the road with you.
No, actually she did. So yes, normally it is me, your mother, and Jake, because Jake is a driving freak. Jake, because of a legitimate reason of a bad back, could not help us. Yeah. Mike, because of no legitimate reason at all, just blew us off to go watch Notre Dame win a back-to-back national championship, which congratulations to Notre Dame, by the way. But Mike is now, let's see, 1, 2, 6. Oh, wait, you're even lower than that. You're as low can be on the list. You're behind, son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, 3 dogs, everybody, because you bailed on. You're behind Emerson.
Tell you firmly right now, don't care.
Yeah.
Back-to-back national championships, partying with the boys after the game. I mean, if you were attempting to even think I would feel bad about this, I got to tell you, brother, barking up the wrong tree. You ain't going to get there.
No. I knew you weren't going to feel bad. This is for everybody listening and or watching to realize what a direct son that you are to your parents, who, by the way, today, especially today is 3,505 days of something very special to Mike, to me, and your mother. It is our 37th wedding anniversary. We have been together for 13,505 days.
And
starting
you had
year
to do
38
the math thing for it. You had to do the math thing for
had
it.
To do it.
I'm surprised you didn't have the hours or it broken down into how you were asking me some little quick math question here to celebrate, you sicko.
I'm just trying to talk about the amount of days with your mother, and you immediately went to that. No congratulations out of you. I at least get a clap from Emerson. I get nothing out of you but ripping my math for the 37 years your mother and I have been together, of which 34 of them have been very difficult with you as our son. And that just seems to continue is what it does. But no, 37 years for me and your mother. Been awesome, obviously. The road trip was great as well. She actually liked it this time, Mike. It went pretty easy. We did most of the driving in the daylight, and we went past stops we were going to make. So we actually sped up the trip. It worked out pretty well.
Okay, so I just have a quick question. Just going back to Buc-ee's because that's extremely important. What did you get to eat there? Because it is like an adult playground there, almost like an adult amusement park, especially in terms of food. The brisket sandwich, I told you on Twitter, you got to make love to that. You got to get a pulled pork sandwich. You got to get the fudge. Oh.
Okay, we got that most popular treat, like the cinnamon crunch type of thing. I forgot what it was called.
The pecans?
The beaver nuggets.
The beaver nuggets. Yeah, we got a couple of bags of that. I got a banana pecan nut loaf. We also got we did get the brisket, but this was in the morning. It was earlier in the morning. So it was an egg and brisket, egg type of a burrito. It was phenomenal, by the way. Phenomenal. Absolutely fantastic. The coffee display is incredible. Had a great cup of coffee. The beef jerky display. Now, again, it was early in the morning, so we didn't go the beef jerky route, but it's unreal. Your mother got me this shirt. She got both the grandkids a couple of things as well. It is a mecca. And the amount of gas pumps there. What I did not know, it is not a 18-wheeler friendly place. I did not understand that. And from what I understand, the people driving the big rigs aren't very happy about that because, I mean, you can go there and go in and, enjoy some of the accoutrements from there, but you can't get gas. So you just be stopping to stop. So I did not know that about Buc-ee's, quite honestly, because they have 1,000 gas pumps. Well, all I have to tell anybody who's traveling, and everybody does it at some point, if you see a Buc-ee's or if you see one that's on the way, stop in. It's worth it. It is worth all the wonderful things that they have in there. I wish we had more time to stop in there, quite honestly.
Yep, great bathrooms in there. You mentioned all the different fashion choices that you can make inside that place. You can get lawn ornaments in there. You can take pictures with the mascot. It's truly an experience overall, and I'm glad that you guys got that, especially Mom, since she's going to have to deal with you in the another year of life there. Congratulations on the anniversary to my mom and dad. 37 years going strong, and we'll see if Mom keeps re-upping for another year of having to go and fill up my dad's bathwater for him. So congratulations to you guys on surviving the road trip to South Bend and getting through another year together of blissful matrimony. What else you got here?
Real quick, because listen, we listened to the show obviously the last couple of days, and I just wanted to make a quick comment because I had gotten to know him so well over the years of Bill Walton. I know you guys had talked about it, him and Bill Walton, but Bill Walton, he'd been a friend to so many people, and when I was doing Mike and Mike, Greeny and I, we had him on the show weekly. He was a weekly hit for probably 5-6 years. And a couple of things that I certainly remember of it was the one episode, and I don't know if you mentioned it, Mike, where we had the one segment that he was on, and segments in radio that don't have hard outs were 10, 11 minutes in that area there. And we basically introduced Bill Walton in one segment, and he talked the entire 11 minutes to the point where Greeny and I both got up and walked out of the studio. We left we knew he was going to do it. And they had an empty shot of the studio as Bill just talked for 11 minutes. And we all know he can fill the 11 minutes. And then we also had the Mike and Mike, the wedding, where we married two people. And it was this big kind of event that we did back when, radio was good, clean fun and nobody was yelling at one another. And you had to debate everything. It was just, we did some fun stuff. And we had a wedding. And Bill Walton happened to be in town talking basketball, and he just asked if he could come to the wedding. So right in the front row of the wedding was the president, then George Bodenheimer, standing right next to the 7-footer Bill Walton in the audience of this wedding at ESPN. It was amazing. But as I tweeted about him, he's a guy that wrung more out of life, than anybody I ever knew, inside sports or outside of sports, on what his sayings, what he learned from John Wooden. Just an incredible, incredible human being. There were two people, Mike, the other one, that when they came on Mike and Mike, or when it was me and you and Trey that we had as guests, it was like the old E.F. Hutton commercial that nobody young is going to remember. But the tagline of E.F. Hutton was when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. So it was when these two guys talked, you listened. It was Bill Walton and Bill Curry. Those were two guests that we had that when they came on, everybody just sat down in their car, wherever, and just listened to what they had to say. Two of the great guests we have ever had on our radio show. So Bill's a great guy. Got a lot out of life and certainly will be missed.
And I think would appreciate the fact that in his remembrance there was an E.F. Hutton reference, which you're absolutely right. I have never even once heard of in my entire life, as I had imagined the majority of the audience my age, but I'm sure everyone that listens around your age absolutely got. I do remember the wedding. I saw the clips of that were making the rounds yesterday, which just an insane thing, by the way, that would happen. Yeah. And so fitting that if you're going to do a wedding that also featured the Florida Gators mascots walking down the aisle with the happy couple, getting married in front of some of the most important ESPN brass in the country, that Bill Walton would also just waltz in. That seems basically like if This Is Sports Center commercial came to life and wrapped itself around a wedding. And if anyone would love that, it is obviously the late, great Bill Walton, who, as you mentioned, was as colorful a character and as fully three-dimensional a human being as anyone you're going to find who took their trip through the cosmos. So obviously, all still mourning the loss of Bill Walton, the great man that he was. But Dad, Bill Walton loved talking about sports for long times on end without any interruption. And so we'll continue to do just that around here, certainly in the way that he would have enjoyed, hopefully, with a little bit of levity mixed in to all of it. Because the other thing that's happened in the last couple of days is you haven't been with us to talk about any of the sports either, and we've had a bunch of that going on in the NBA playoffs. We had the sweep in the Boston Celtics-Indiana Pacers series in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then we had the Timberwolves finally able to hold on and pull one out, Dad. And for Minnesota, Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and Rudy Gobert get another crack at this thing tonight to try and extend the series. Nobody has ever come back from down 0-3 in a series in the NBA playoffs and the conference finals. So, Dad, did anything that you saw in your travels from this Timberwolves outfit give you some glimmer of hope that maybe they could be the first?
No, I don't think they're going to do that. I can't imagine them putting three more together. I think Dallas is just too good. They put themselves in too much of a hole. You just can't. And obviously the big news in that game was how Karl-Anthony Towns actually shooting well. He was shooting, under 30% for the series coming into that game, and has himself a big night. And I loved his quote. It's game 4, down 3-0. Ain't no time to have any doubts yet. You think? Go out there and be aggressive. Shoot my shot like I've been doing all series. That's something that I agree with. Shooters shoot, right? And he has called himself the greatest shooting big man of all time. And if you look at some of the stats, he's not really off on that as far as a big man and shooting and what he's been able to do. But he's been very cold. But what do shooters do? They just keep shooting. So it's not shocking he would just keep shooting. And this time around, he made some shots and he shot much better and they won the game. But to think, Mike, that they can do it 3 more times in a row, can they get one tonight and send it back to Dallas? Yeah, they probably can do that. And then we'll talk even more about, oh boy, can they get this done? But Luka and Kyrie and friends are just playing too well. And that's why in a series, now we thought Minnesota was the better team going into this series. But when you're up 3-0 in a series, asking that other team to win 4 straight, there's a reason it hasn't been done before. It's too difficult to do. And those two for Dallas have been playing too well. So I don't think this is going to be the first time it happens. No.
No, I don't either. Heading into this game tonight, Luka Doncic once again listed as questionable with any of the number of things that have been ailing him throughout the playoffs. Obviously, he's going to play. The one to keep an eye on, Dad, in terms of can Minnesota steal one tonight? Because you're back now in Minnesota. You're going to have that raucous crowd there. You survived the couple of games on the road in Dallas. We're able to get it back home one more time. To me, the role players for the Dallas Mavericks shined into this equation. We talked about Derek Lively, who got banged on the back of the head by a knee. He's questionable tonight with that neck injury because you saw in his place, Dwight Powell was -4 in his 3 minutes on the court. Maxi Kleber looked pretty hesitant while he was out there. And so outside of Daniel Gafford, who can go in there and provide a presence on the interior, we saw Karl-Anthony Towns more comfortable going inside and going down there early before he started lighting off some of those shots late. I'll be curious for them. And then, Dad, on the other side, I think we talked a lot about Karl-Anthony Towns, but Anthony Edwards finally had a big night too. He had been someone that had not been as, I'd say, publicly liable in most people's estimations, just because with Karl it looks different. He's not going down in the paint as much as we want for a big man. Anthony Edwards was at least going inside. He just wasn't all that productive early on until game 4 of this series. He's a guy that's got to have another big game, and defensively I think his life got a lot easier because he's no longer guarding Kyrie Irving after calling him out before this series in a way that, boy, did he F around and find out on.
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, without question. So that's always interesting to see the matchups. Looks like he'll go over and be on, Luka in this one. But we'll see how the matchups play out. But you're right, especially for Minnesota at home. That's when your role players need to step up the most. We had talked about Jaden McDaniels. He had gone on a string of 20-plus games in the last win. Now, they did win the game. He had 10 in that one. But you look for who's going to be the guy that steps up, the role player, because you expect Edwards and Towns to at least have a hand in this if Towns isn't cold again. But who is that next guy, the next two guys that are going to step up? Do I think they can get the win tonight? Yes, I do think they can get the win tonight. But, again, hard-pressed to go three more.
Yeah, I'm going to do our producer, Bailey, who's a diehard Timberwolves fan, a favor again and pick the Dallas Mavericks to win this game like I did in Game 4. Because when I believed in the beginning, it wasn't good enough for Bailey, and he decided to use his social media platform to slander me, to splice up my words, to fit his propaganda for the Timberwolves. And so now I've got to go full heel on this thing. I do think they're going to lose the series anyway, but I think it's going to happen tonight in Game 5. And I think Kyrie Irving could be the difference. We talked about the switch up defensively for him, but he was a guy. I think you look at the end of Game 4, just was not himself offensively, wasn't as productive, and for him and Luka to both kind of fade in the fourth quarter in a place where they had usually dominated, that looked like, in my estimation, the difference in that game in Game 4, and I can't imagine you're going to find a way to hold down a player who has been as resurgent. I was listening to the Dominique Foxworth show the other day. If you were grading postseason winners, Dad, in terms of people who have enjoyed either a career postseason, a boost in the way we talk about them, or what have you, Kyrie Irving's name's probably in the top 3 when it comes to the change in perception around this player that we've seen this postseason.
Yeah, I mean, he has been, and he has been that guy on and off. What did we say? 14-1 now in the closeouts. It's what you wonder what you're going to get if he comes up with a big game along with Luka, as you mentioned. He'll be questionable, into next year. With all of the nicks that he has. As we said, nobody's 100% right now, and you certainly know all the time when he's hurt.
But, and I was going to say, though, that makes, I think, tonight's game very important because on the other side, Dad, we talked about it off the top heading into the NBA Finals. You've got this big break. The Boston Celtics are sitting at home cooling right now, trying to get Kristaps Porzingis up to speed, able to rest all their guys, even though injury outside of the Kristaps one hadn't really been a huge factor in that series for them. So if you're the Dallas Mavericks and you've got a banged-up Luka Doncic, you've got Derek Lively, who you're trying to get back after that neck injury, having that kind of break to match the opponent you're getting ready to go up against, since we do this rest versus rust thing all the time, would be huge for that team in particular.
Always. And when you're talking about rest for Knicks, too, or injuries, obviously you're in a lot better shape. I mean, the Lively, boy, that shot to the back of the head didn't look fun at all. But Luka could just use some days off, right? I mean, just to rest the body a little bit. So there is the rest versus rust. But, every team, what they do is they try to explain it away, saying, especially if Dallas moves on from this, hey, we're hot right now. We're playing well. Let's just keep playing. We know damn well they'd love some rest. We know damn well they'd love to sit Luka for a few days and give him some time off like the Celtics players are getting right now. So you can try and talk yourself into anything that you want, but there's the reality of the situation is how much more worn out are some of the Mavericks, especially Luka, going to get.
Yeah, and I think it's different for different teams, right? I think a lot of that can apply to when you've got a team that's making a run that's a little bit outside of their normal circumstances. For the Mavericks, Luka Doncic is a bucket. He can go get it any time, and so it makes it a little bit easier to jumpstart things. And for the Boston Celtics on the other side, they have been one of the most prolific offenses and defenses in the sport, and so I don't think you'll lose that even over the course of the 9 days that they have here. Plenty more time to get into that as we're just getting started today here, looking ahead to that game. As we mentioned, we'll talk to Chris Hines from Minneapolis about that upcoming series, a book on Anthony Edwards that's in the works, and plenty more. But coming up next, one NBA team decided to make the rare twist and lock down their veteran coach for the long term after a disappointing season. We'll tell you why next.
right, folks, more basketball news of the day. Ty Lue gets an extension from the Clippers despite some early exits the last 2 seasons in the playoffs. And it changed from other moves, really, this offseason here, Gojo, where coaches get a very short leash. Clippers have decided to extend Lue, and we know the past few offseasons there's been significant interest in him from other teams. The Bucks and Suns were rumored, and also the Lakers were linked to him after failing to complete a deal with him after the 2019 offseason. So good move, bad move here? What do you think?
I think generally a good move here, Emerson. This is something that we don't see all that often in the current NBA, though, which is when a team with the kind of expectations that Ty Lue's Clippers had fall short of that during the postseason, that the coach is allowed to survive on the other side. And, Dad, I think it's twofold. It's a testament to, one, Ty Lue and the respect he has around the league as a guy who is someone that's coached at a high level around here for a long time, obviously was a player for a long time and is respected with the job that he's done. But also, if you're Steve Ballmer and the Los Angeles Clippers, that looming specter of, hey, the Lakers are looking for a coach too, and LeBron James and Ty Lue have a little bit of history together. We might want to go ahead and lock this down because, hell, we're always fighting for relevance in a town where we're getting ready to move into a new building. And the last thing that we want is to look like the second-class citizens again and have our head coach poached by the team across town.
This is like in college when that big job opens up and there are coaches at other schools that pray their name gets mentioned. Please have their agent, hey, get my name mentioned. All you need is your name mentioned for the potential, especially when the Alabama job opens up. Just get your name mentioned and you're going to get an extension. You're going to get a bump in salary. And for Ty Lue, that was part of it. Hey, listen. From in the vacuum, it's just good to see because the most expendable person on that roster is usually the coach, right? That if things are just ask, Ham and Vogel, who are, on the outside now looking in, they're used as, okay, we're going to make the change there. It's easy to do with the coach, and the coach just sits on the sidelines and continues to make his million. So that's usually the easy out. So it was nice to see. If you want to just go with that side of it and say, oh, it's nice to see they kept him, but there was no doubt that the Lakers situation had something to do with it, with Ty's, contacts there, connections there, and the potential of what could have been. So it's a domino effect. So, they want to stop the crosstown team from getting their guy, so we give our guy an extension, and now the next domino may fall for the Lakers because of that.
Yep, and that domino appears to be in the shape of one J.J. Redick, because it seems, Dad, all the smoke around that's going to give way to fire pretty soon for J.J. And if they do, Dad, ultimately, is this a hire that you can get behind for the Los Angeles Lakers, especially with this in the background where we don't know if they were truly going after Ty Lue in a meaningful way, but there was the thought out there in the ether. Would J.J. Redick feel like a win for you for the Los Angeles Lakers if that ends up being the guy they go for?
So if you have a team that you are, this is like Tampa Bay when they got Brady, like now the Jets when they get Aaron Rodgers. And now it's like the Lakers who have had LeBron for a little bit is you need to win now, right? You need to get it done right now. So at times to me, it can be odd that you're going for a first time, not only a first time head coach, but a first-time coach in the NBA, that you would want to go with someone who had a little more experience and came in, not to say JJ is going to come in with a plan, but we have to remember he is a first-time head coach. I get asked this all the time. I don't care if it's head coaches, the NBA or the NFL. Hey, how do you grade this? I don't know. I give it all an I, an incomplete. We have no idea what J.J. Redick is going to do as a head coach. Just like every offensive or defensive coordinator that gets their first head coaching job in the NFL, we have no idea how they're going to react going into the big seat from their coordinating seat. And this is now a broadcasting seat into a head coaching job. And we've seen it before. We have seen it before, obviously. And it has been successful. I don't remember going back. This is the thing I would need to look. Going back, how has it gone in the first year of that transition of a broadcast? Steve Kerr. Now, again, Steve Kerr was in a basketball position with the Suns. It wasn't like he was never a part of it. But still, then went from the broadcast booth. I don't know how it went that first year. I don't have great recall like that, because that's what you're talking about, right? You're talking about a year or two with LeBron, and that's it, of making hay right now. So to me, it's always a little bit interesting about going with a first-time head coach because you just don't know. And listen, we both know JJ. I think JJ's a heck of a guy. I hope he does great. I'm just talking about the overall situation of you're on limited time, one of the greatest players of all time on a team that's got a little bit of power to it right now, and it just seems odd to go with a first-time head coach.
It does, and I can understand prioritizing the relationship with your superstar at the top of that. Obviously, JJ Redick and LeBron do the podcast together. They get along very well, and that goes a long way in any team getting jump-started with a new head coach is how quickly can you connect with the stars there. What I don't know is what that relationship would be like with Anthony Davis and the people outside of LeBron James in that building and how it would fare. I trust JJ Redick's basketball brain. He's a guy that sees the game in a way as a teacher on the broadcast that obviously gives a lot to the audience, provides a lot of color and depth. And so I think because he's always sort of seemed to be coaching on air, right? There are certain guys the analysis seems to go beyond the surface level stuff and seems to have that in mind. And JJ's always been one of them. So it's like he's been training for this since he's been a broadcaster.
I agree with that. The only issue I will have is it's one thing to have it and to broadcast it. It's another thing to put it into practical application, right? There's book smart and maybe street smart. So there's book smart of him knowing everything, but it's how does it apply? What's your rotation going to be? You know, how do you use different players? There are other new nuances of a head coach that you find out more of the longer they're a head coach. I don't want to turn this into a JJ Redick bashing situation. This is more
But I don't think any of it's bashing. I don't think any of it's bashing. It's the reality of the situation that he knows is coming up in this job.
It's a first-time head coach, and again, first time in the league as a coach, given a team that needs to make hay right now. It'd be one thing if this was a young team and that was going to go build for a little bit, Emerson, right? But this is a team on basically a 2-year time limit to win another one before LeBron, again, if he stays there, which I think he's going to stay there, before he's done playing. So this is like a really small window as opposed to a new head coach going to a younger team.
Yeah, I was going to say with the young team and still building a little bit, even though LeBron James is like 55 years old, will JJ Redick, let's say, if he is the next head coach of the Lakers here, Gojo, does he make a push for the Lakers to draft Bronny James?
I don't think that'll be something that he's necessarily as concerned about. And even if the Lakers do, like if that all goes the way LeBron's had going to plan, like I said yesterday, that's a garnish that's not a main menu item for the Los Angeles Lakers going into next season. Bronny's not going to have an impact on the outcome of that season outside of just adding to or detracting from LeBron James's happiness during that time period. So I'm less worried about that. And Dad, the other way I could spin it, obviously, with JJ coming into a more veteran team, though, is there are fewer variables you have to worry about. To the point about Steve Kerr coming into the situation with Golden State, you've got players that are much more veteran in their tenure. And while we've seen that doesn't always go well, see the Milwaukee Bucks this season with Adrian Griffin and the way the start of the season went, even though, I don't know, looking back on it now, it seems like Adrian Griffin did a pretty darn good job relative to what we saw the rest of the way from the Milwaukee Bucks, walking into an outfit that maybe just needs a few things sharpened here and there as opposed to wholesale reorganization like a young team might, could be a good place for a first-time head coach with JJ's background as a player to come in and find his way and get his feet wet in this job.
You're right. It could be. That's it right there. It could. There's no guarantee with anybody, right? But at least with a veteran coach, you kind of know the way they coach and maybe can fall into a pattern a little quicker than a new coach who's kind of feeling his way around as a brand new head coach trying to get his bearings. I hope it's successful. I hope JJ has a long career. I like the guy a lot, but it just in this situation of brand new coach with veteran team with a limited window, it just seems like it could be a rough early going.
I wonder when they're going to announce this, because I think we're supposed to still have him on before the NBA Finals, and we'd still like to get to talk to JJ about this. So if the Lakers could just hold off a bit, we'd appreciate it.
As I was pulling in, my window was down, and the officer told me to stop. And first of all, I did not know that he was a police officer. I thought he was one of the security guards that was mistaken. And as I was pulling by him, he grabbed my arm.
Stop right there. Why does it matter if he's a security guard or a police officer?
Because
if somebody's telling you to stop.
Yes, you're right. I should have stopped. I did get a little bit impatient because I'm quite late for my tea time. Believe me, if I knew he was a police officer, I would have gotten out of the car. I don't know what to tell you other than I was a little bit panicked trying to get into the golf course, and now I don't know what to do.
Based upon the totality of the evidence, my office cannot move forward in the prosecution of the charges filed against Mr. Scheffler. Mr. Scheffler's characterization that this was, quote, a big misunderstanding, close quote, is corroborated by the evidence.
All right, you heard what Scotty Scheffler said there while he was getting arrested, and then the county eventually agreeing, and just like that, our long back and forth. National nightmare is over, but not before. Detective Gillis released his statement in response to Scheffler's lawyer absolutely crushing him outside the Louisville courthouse. So this is an interesting letter here, an interesting statement, Gojo. We were just talking about it during commercial break. It's really the postscript. The postscript stands out to me where I said, is this real? He goes, yes, the department has us buying freaking $80 pants. To those concerned, they were indeed ruined. But Scotty, it's all good. I never would have guessed I'd have the most famous pair of pants in the country for a few weeks because of this. Take care and be safe. It was literally the perfect conclusion to a bizarre incident that will be one of the greatest footnotes in recent major championship history.
Yeah, I guess this is one of those things, all's well that ends well in this particular situation that began chaotic and shrouded in mystery, and Dad sort of ends in that way because while in recent days with Scotty Scheffler, we've seen released video footage from certain dash cams and from pole cams around the area that show part of the instance, and then we got the audio leak there of Scotty Scheffler and a different officer on the scene having a conversation after the original interaction with Officer Gillis. Ultimately, there's so much of a gap in the middle that maybe leaves something to the imagination. But, Dad, overall, this seems like cooler heads finally prevailing. Almost everything that we did see come out supported Scotty Scheffler and his camp's version of events in this case with the Louisville Police Department here. They obviously backed down quickly after this and dropped the charges. And I think in no small part, Dad, due to the fact that Scotty Scheffler, throughout all of this, as calm, cool, and collected off the course as he has been on the course here. From the moment that he went through stretching in a jail cell to get to the course, answering questions after his first round there at Valhalla, to now after the fact, making sure to not go out of his way to embarrass the officer or the department involved at all, when he could easily have gone on the offensive the way his lawyer did when prompted on certain questions. I think Scotty Scheffler and his cool demeanor, as much as anything, helped mitigate this situation and get him to this point now.
Yeah, it turned out to be exactly what he had said, a big misunderstanding. And to that point, we don't know how much of a misunderstanding because there was no body cam video to show if it was a misunderstanding because the officer still says he was dragged. I was drugged by the car. My pants were ruined. I have injuries to my knees and my wrists. Well, A, we never saw that because you didn't have your body cam on. And B, here's the other thing. He wasn't alone out there, right? I have not heard another officer, whether it's a security guard or police officer, corroborate that story. You know, and will we at some point? I don't know. But again, they weren't alone. They weren't on some desolate area there where it was Scotty Scheffler's word against, Brian Gillis's word. It was right out there in the open, and all we saw was that little bit because the guy didn't have his body cam on. I mean, that's on him. So you can sit there and tell us all that happened, but if we don't see it, or if there's nobody now, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, but if we didn't see it and there was nobody else there that said, oh yeah, man, Scotty Scheffler was ever in that car, took him for about a 10, 15-yard ride, which is what Gillis had said, and basically threw him off the car. I mean, we have no idea. We haven't heard anybody say, yeah, that's what happened.
No, in fact, we've had, I think, multiple witnesses corroborate Scotty Scheffler's version of events and the reason why this all got dropped so quickly. And we saw Scotty's lawyer popping off. I mean, as cool as Scotty's been, it almost is, no pun intended, good cop, bad cop a little bit with Scotty Scheffler's lawyer, Steve Romines, who, when asked outside of the courthouse, basically said, you know, the officer in question in the audio was asking leading questions. This is why you don't talk to the police after an event like this. And Dad, this is one of those events that obviously was always going to be highly polarizing because it involved law enforcement, especially in a place like Louisville that has a very ominous history with this particular department in particular. But you had an officer's version of events that was fed out immediately and tried to be sold as the truth that almost, I mean, immediately after that, got undermined by every bit of evidence that we got along the way in this altercation. And so, honestly, going back to the original source of all of this, I guess it's one of those things where it's obviously you're thankful that it didn't go worse in any meaningful way. You heard Scotty Scheffler sounded pretty shook up on that audio, and now you can kind of get back to business as usual. Like, I think we're all looking forward to putting what was a weird, chaotic week of golf behind us and getting back to watching Scotty Scheffler likely get back to destroying people because, Dad, that's the other part of this that I don't want to lose sight of is Scotty Scheffler went out after this and I believe ended up, tied for 5th place in a major championship that he started off in jail.
He shot a 66 that day. Like his worst round was the next day when it was probably fatigue setting in.
Right. It was ridiculous what he has gone and done and what he has been doing. He'll be favored at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst for sure. But yeah, he has been, for a guy, and I don't know his track record, but I don't believe he's been arrested before. Nothing ever came up of how as you said, calm, cool, and collective he was with all his answers. And that's why you get a lawyer. You let the lawyer be the bad guy and let the lawyer say all the things that he's going to say. You don't want to be saying all that. So this was one I thought, Mike, that the police department was going to try and stick with some of the charges. Just they were already embarrassed by one of your own officers didn't turn his body cam on, which you're supposed to do. So it's a monster mistake made. So instead of compounding it by saying, you know what, we got nothing here, we got to drop all the charges, I thought they were going to try and make some of the charges still stick. But they didn't even have enough to do that. They didn't, for whatever reason, whether the story of Scotty, the story of the officer, the story of, they had to talk to other police officers around there as well, of just that there wasn't enough to do everything. And now it's just a complete embarrassment by this precinct, the Louisville Police Department. And it's a shame because, listen, I know the police have been getting a bad rap in a lot of places, but listen, we're all pro-police, right? That's a tough job that they're doing, and I'm not going to paint the broad brush and sit there and say, because one cop, and I'm talking about this one, cops may be bad somewhere, doesn't mean all of them are. So, I'm not going to sit there and do that. But in this instance, there certainly seems to be an issue with this officer and the body cam and his story and not enough evidence for any charges to stick.
Yeah, there were some reports last week. This officer's track record isn't exactly the cleanest out there. And this is ending finally because Scotty Scheffler has agreed to not have a countersuit because the Louisville Police Department knows they were in the wrong and they could have been sued out to wazoo. But Scheffler's a good dude.
They didn't. They didn't want any part of this. I mean, listen, everyone involved, especially even Scotty Scheffler, mercifully wanted this to end, which is good for all the rest of us. And we're not going to sit around here and legislate police reform right now. And instead, I do encourage everyone to go out and read the statement. That PS that Emerson read you about the $80 pants that have become one of the most memeable parts of all of this. To what I can gather, and on God's internet in 2024, I mean, it's not even God's internet. This is Satan's internet at this point, the way this thing operates here. If I have to read anything else about Dove Kleiman, I swear to God, I am going to snap. But in the meantime, when we get little morsels like this PS that appears to be real by all accounts referencing this pants, you have to stop and drink in some of the funny that you get out of this because so much of it was serious. This is patently absurd and the perfect note to stick the landing on as we depart the Scotty Scheffler debacle at Valhalla once and for all.
All right, absolutely crazy series going on in the Eastern Conference Finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs, folks. The series currently between Florida and the Rangers tied at 2, heading back to the Big Apple tonight. Things were getting icy because you had Matthew Tkachuk doing his thing and had a really cold response to Chris Kreider throwing his moist mouth guard into the stands in Game 4. In this economy and all of the germs, that right there, folks, is our iciest shot of the night, presented by Jägermeister. And I need you to hear this sound right now.
Yeah, just have the one. Yeah, luckily, it didn't go over the stands. It just threw it up in the air, so got to wash it off and just use it.
Has anybody ever grabbed? I mean,
no.
It's kind of your thing. I mean, I would think somebody that tried to grab it.
No. I told him that was the best play he made all game. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just all game within the game stuff from their side and then from our side. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's just it's not the first time that's happened, actually. So,
again, our iciest shot of the night presented by Jägermeister. Best served at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Damn, that's cold. Check Jägermeister out at www.draftkingsxjagermeister.com. I drank a lot of that in college. That was a key component to forming College Emerson. But this series, another nail-biter. Gentlemen, overtime for a 4th straight game tonight? Give it to me, please.
Yeah.
Well, and mouthpiece politics being legislated into this? I mean, that's Dad, I know you basically barely ever wore a mouthpiece anyway once you got to the NFL, so this wouldn't have happened to you.
No, but something like this happens, right? Where again, if a shoe falls off from a running back and you're a defensive player, a lot of times you pick the shoe up and you throw it, right? You make them go get the shoe. Same with a towel. If you're tackling a guy and the towel comes off that a running back or whatever uses, you end up throwing the towel. It's not like you give it right back to him, or at least we didn't. I don't know where we are nowadays and things like that, though in hockey we know you're going to chuck somebody else's mouthpiece. And, so what? It's German. You got a glove on. It's not like, you're not touching with your bare skin. And even with even if you took your glove off and picked somebody else's mouthpiece up with your bare hand, are we that grossed out by it? I mean, hockey's the smelliest sport there is, from your hockey bag in your locker room. So that's the league. Emerson's sitting there with a look on his face like he's grossed out. I mean, that doesn't even register in the top 1/1,000,000th of gross things that I would do, would pick up somebody's mouthpiece and throw it, whether I had a glove on or not. But yeah, without question, it's a gamesmanship thing where you just if something comes off of another player on the other team, you just pick it up and you throw it. Why not?
I don't like fluids. I don't like juices.
That's the most surprising thing I've ever heard from any person related to the show is Emerson Latzia being grossed out by this, saying, I don't like fluids, giving everything that we know about you. A little bit stunned there. Dad, you mentioned picking things up and throwing them, though. I felt 1,000 Florida Gators fans all recoil at the same time. You remember that 2020 game, Florida and LSU, where Florida ends up losing when Marco Wilson rips off that shoe and throws it in that game and gets flagged by the referees. So that can go sideways on you pretty quickly. Thankfully here, cooler heads prevail.
You can't be unbelievably obvious with it, okay? I mean,
that was one of those obvious. That was an Austin Powers ass shoe throw.
That was. You got to be a little more. You got to be a little more nonchalant, so it makes it a little more difficult for that person to get their piece of equipment back. But I have not seen the mouthpiece throw before. Tkachuk said he did. Don't know. I haven't seen that before. He would know more than I would as far as that. But I have certainly seen shoes and towels be tossed on a football field. And occasionally, if there's a fight out there, a helmet gets launched. And that was back when a guy, offensive lineman named Kyle Turley, was playing in the NFL. He was known for launching a few helmets.
They rip them off now.
Kyle was a different cat when it came to a lot of that stuff. So glad that everyone's done launching mouthpieces and helmets overall, because it has given away. I mean, we got two great series in the conference finals in the NHL right now. We got a great opportunity with the gap potentially coming up between the NBA playoffs and the NBA finals there, where you can get a lot of hockey front and center stage. And the way that these series have been played, both of them tied it 2 apiece. Dad, we mentioned the Rangers-Panthers series. The Cats have looked fast and furious on this one. They've pinned the Rangers back a ton in their defensive end there. The Rangers power play finally got off the schneid the other night. And so they've been battling back, trying to break this President's Trophy curse going into the postseason this year, Dad. As this is evened up right now, I get that they've managed to notch a couple of wins. Florida's looked like they've been a little bit more in control in this one, so I'll still back our folks, the friends at the Dan Le Batard Show and the Cardiac Cats, but it's been nice that New York's at least gotten this thing back to even keel, and now we get to decide this over the next 3 games.
Yeah, that game tonight, the game last night, Oilers were actually down a couple of goals, and they go on a tear and end up beating the Stars 5-2, even that up 2-2. It's interesting with having the night now, Mike. I think it's an interesting conversation because the NBA playoffs, obviously, people are into, and thank God Minnesota won that game, or we'd be having a break from then until, I think, June 6th it starts. We at least get another game tonight. We'll see how long it lasts, but the hockey could have nights to themselves. And you wonder how it goes because, listen, I love hockey. Always have since I lived here in the mid-'90s and you guys were young when I was doing local radio here and college games for ESPN. We would take you guys to the Coyote games.
I do love how you're saying here by now because you haven't done the mental transfer that you're now in South Bend and not Arizona. I was looking up for a second. I was like, we liked Notre Dame's hockey team and had a good time with those dudes. A lot of Frozen Four trips there. Shout out to my buddy Eric Ringel, who listens all the time. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, we used to go to a lot of Coyotes games. I grew up with a poster of Keith Tkachuk, Jeremy Roenick, and Nikolai Hobby-Bulin on my bathroom door, for God's sake.
And now we're watching his kid play, Tkachuk's kid with the Panthers. It's pretty wild. Got to make you feel old as well as me feel even older. But my point is, I loved talking about, and now when I was local in Phoenix, you talked more local sports. But nationally, when I was at ESPN for a couple of decades doing the show, unfortunately, I loved hockey, but hockey just didn't rate when you talked about it. And over the years, we've seen all the different things you tried on TV, including the puck with a tail, the blue puck when Fox had hockey. And then during my time at ESPN dumped hockey and you couldn't find hockey anywhere. Now hockey's back on ESPN. I haven't looked, I'm not going to lie, but I hope the ratings are doing well. As I said, I love hockey. I have to believe they're doing a lot better than when you couldn't find them at all anywhere. So Emerson, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, ratings,
Emerson, you said the ratings have been great, right?
The ratings are phenomenal. I mean, we're coming off a regular season here that it was the most watched regular season on cable in 30 years in the United States. And then you also had a historic first round in the NHL playoffs in terms of ratings and also fan viewership and engagement. And the playoffs have really only gotten better and better. And now we're looking at 2 conference finals that are tied at 2. One of them's going for a 4th straight overtime game. Well, and you guys got to remember, too, like the playoffs here, this is the time when a lot of casuals end up really starting to, like, dial in. And the product has been fantastic with the game's biggest stars on the ice.
That's when, and again, you may get some nights to yourself if the NBA goes on a little bit of a hiatus till June 6th if these series are over. Because I would love that. Because I do know you could get instant tracking of ratings, and it was just a shame in all the big meetings we had it, and this was, at ESPN, it was like, man, when you start talking hockey, people just tune out, and it's a shame because I love it. But again, it went from non-existent when it wasn't with ESPN. I was so happy when ESPN picked it back up because at least I knew it was going to be seen and promoted, because it's now an ESPN product again, so they were going to actually promote it, which they have. So I'm real happy to hear about the ratings being up. I figured they would be because it went from nowhere to now back, in the atmosphere again.
And as a reminder, things don't have to rate well for them to be good and for you to like them. There's a lot of content out there. The people that love hockey are always going to love it. And to Emerson's point, in a world oversaturated by content, the Stanley Cup postseason is always going to be incredibly compelling, and so far, this has been just that. We're looking forward to hour number 2. We'll get some new-look offenses in the NFL next.
Regardless of if OTAs go away in the future, gentlemen, this year they are here. And we're going to read into all of the comments right now leading up to next season because we are now inside 100 days and it's May. So how many offenses will be looking differently come September? Joe Brady, who helped turn the Bills offense around, said it wasn't his offense. It was Josh Allen's. So how will it look? Question mark.
You got to be really intentional about it because at the end of the day, look, there's only, one guy in the receiver room that's even caught a ball from Josh in a game. And so every rep in practice, the individual, there's such an intention behind what we're doing and why we're doing it. And for him to get a comfort level and a feel of some of those guys. And so, yeah, your offense is Josh Allen's offense, but it's also about what your players do well. And, you're going to put them in. So this is the time right now that we're experimenting with some things like, hey, can this guy do this? Can this guy not do this? I think the guys last year, obviously it wasn't exactly how we wanted and didn't want it how we wanted it to end, but the guys kind of played together. And it's about understanding that, hey, in this offense, everyone is going to eat.
How different is this offense going to look without Stephon Diggs there now? Go, Joe.
Well, I mean, we got a bit of a preview of that down the stretch of last season, right? We mentioned it was somewhere near career lows for Stephon Diggs towards the end of last year. Dad, when this Bills offense really made its midseason turn, they were sitting right around 500. We thought they were on track to miss the postseason, and then they became a Death Star once they basically just let Josh Allen go out there and say, hey, listen, we understand we want to cut down on the turnovers. We know that was a big headline coming into the middle of the season, but you had to let one of the most unique quarterbacks in the NFL go and do this thing as a part of the run game, but certainly as a part of pushing it down the field at times as well. And so I think without Stephon Diggs, yes, they're going to need help finding a true number one in that offense. But when you've got one of the true super weapons at quarterback in this league, a lot of that gets a lot easier. It's the rare instance where, yes, you do have a quarterback that's actually capable of making all the parts around him better because of the effort and energy he requires from opposing defenses just for himself.
I remember going through this with Josh Allen when he has a big rookie year, and then the next year they were like, we don't want you running as much. We don't want you doing this as much. They tried that for a little bit, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to let Josh be Josh. He's got to run. He's got to throw. He's got to do his thing. So now who they find out? Listen, we've gone through this in Kansas City. Now, not the same because a constant has been a Hall of Fame tight end in Travis Kelce, but they've lost some wide receivers, right? And they ended up with a rookie being the top wide receiver last year in Rashee Rice. So they've been trying to find their way, but it's a little easier to find your way when, as I said, you have a future Hall of Fame tight end, catching most of the balls there. So I understand what Joe Brady is saying. We got new receivers. One guy's caught a ball from Josh. You're going to find out. And in all honesty, you're not going to find out till the game start. That's the thing about it. We're going to watch OTAs. We're going to watch him practicing on air. We're going to watch him practicing in shorts. And we're going to see where he's going to throw the ball. But we have no idea. We have no idea until we get into the game to see what the defenses are, see how these receivers that Josh hasn't thrown to in real games are going to be able to run their routes, are going to understand the combinations out there, are going to understand the coverages, and are going to get open for Josh to throw it to him.
Yeah, but I think we can take some things from what worked well for them last year, and I think what we've seen them sort of go all in on has been this multi-tight end set that's starting to, I won't say become in vogue around the rest of the NFL again, but we know for them, they wanted to make a change. They had been more of a spread out team that had let Josh do his thing. And like a lot of other teams around the NFL, we saw when the going got tough, they decided to become more of a warhammer on the inside running the football. That was an area where they had a ton of success last year, going back to the Dallas game. That was kind of a big kickstart down the home stretch for them, and where the wheels started to come off for the Cowboys, where they just sent it right down State Street. And that's equal parts an offensive line that looked a little bit more comfortable, and they've got Deion Dawkins locked up there. Mitch Morris leaves, but they replace him with Connor McGovern from the Dallas Cowboys, who's a quality center around the league that they can slot in there. And so you get that with a group going downhill that's got a pretty deep backfield that also gets its quarterback's legs involved plenty in critical situations. And I know that's even a thing they want to try and hold till the end of the season. They don't want to put Josh in harm's way because he's that important. But, Dad, they almost called it, 11.5 personnel last year, because you've got Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, who Kincaid is a great pass catcher, a dynamic threat in the middle of the field, not exactly the most devastating blocker in the world, but you don't need to be to reference Travis Kelce and what he's meant to that Kansas City offense. And so I think a lot of what they did there at the end of last season, Dad, getting some of those bigger personnel groups on the field, relying more on your run game in the interim, while you see if Keon Coleman can come along and be that true X receiver for you, while you see how Curtis Samuel slots in opposite a guy like Khalil Shakir, who is the one receiver in that room who's caught passes from Josh Allen. And I think having that as your foundation, we've seen for a lot of the best teams around the league, Kansas City, San Francisco, and some others, can give you time to work in the rest of those new parts.
Yeah, work it with the two tight ends for sure. Knox, remember, he got hurt a decent amount, so Kincaid really stepped out. You had guys like Kincaid, Laporta really step out. So I think those two together can be devastating. You're going to see that with the Raiders after they got Brock Bowers and took Michael Mayer the year before, trying to do the same thing. One can block better than the other. Both can catch the balls. One more of a receiver than the other. So you're right. Just like Pat could lean on Travis, Josh can lean on multiple tight end sets in a running game until you find that receiver. But again, when are it's going to take time.
It is, but you can also lean on Josh. Like, that's the biggest difference between him and Patrick, is both of them have a howitzer attached to their shoulder. The other one's like a runaway moose on the highway when he takes off, though, and Josh Allen, who provides one of the most unique mismatches in the NFL when he breaks through the second level.
Yeah, he does. He does. And they cringe every time he does it, but you have to let him do it. You have to I went through this with Lamar. May have Lamar pass more. Don't let him run as much because he's going to get hurt. Though when the times Lamar got hurt, it's been in the pocket, not when he's running the ball. You got to let these guys be who they are. And that's the only way. If Buffalo's going to win while Josh is there, he's got to do it his way, and that's running the ball a lot.
And, Dad, we're going to focus a lot on the offenses, looking at some of the best offenses in the league today, but certainly that Buffalo defense is going to go a long way, and that Sean McDermott showed himself again last year, taking back over defensive play calling duties after the departure of Leslie Frazier, and I think acquitting himself really well with a defense that down the spine seemed to be actively decaying. A lot of the injury on the back end to so many of those players have now gone by the wayside. They've had to graduate out a secondary that got old and banged up with a lot of guys like Trey White, who were great players, but just weren't on the field often enough in the last couple of seasons to go out and give you that same impact. The structure of Sean McDermott and the play calling there went and offset a lot of them. I think defensively, personnel-wise, they're still in a good position to be able to go and do that, but this is going to fall on the shoulders of your quarterback, Josh Allen. In the meantime, in a division that, if we look at some of the top offenses next year, Dad, I still think has a chance to be near the top because of the quarterback. We're banking on a lot of different things coming together for the Jets. And then the Miami Dolphins, the other one, Dad, that statistically were near the top of the NFL, second in yards per play last year, still trying to solidify their offensive line, trying to see outside of Waddle and Tyreek Hill what they're going to do in that wide receiver room, and if they're going to pay Tua before the start of the season. Which offense between the two of those, Dad, the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, would you be most comfortable betting on right now heading into 2024?
Oh, I'd be way more comfortable betting on Miami's offense overall, right? With Waddle, with Tyreek Hill, you bring in Odell Beckham, who I don't know what he has left, but he doesn't have to. He's not a number one or a number two guy, so he's going to give you some gravy there. The running game I really, really like as well with Mostert, with Jeff Wilson's back. Devon Achane is back. Is it? I know his pronunciation has changed a couple of times.
Yeah.
Is it Achane?
I have it. I have it here. It is Devon Achane. Devon Achane. Say it with me. Devon Achane.
That went through a couple of changes, I know, as last year in college to then going to the NFL. But I mean, I love what they have in the backfield at wide receiver as well. So I would definitely take that from the offensive side, their offense over Buffalo's offense.
Ooh.
Would you pick them to win that division? Because I still think the Buffalo Bills are the class of this division, and I still think they win it in 2024.
Yeah, I still think they win it as well. That doesn't mean I can't think Miami's offense is better, but I think Buffalo wins the division still. Because I'm trying to think who take New England out of it, and the Jets' only chance is Aaron Rodgers is healthy the entire year. And a lot of that is because of what he can do spreading the ball around and because of that Jets defense. Let's be honest. That defense is really, really good. Not all time, like one of the guys on the defense was saying last year, we want to be one of the all-time greats. You didn't do that, but you're a really good defense in the NFL today. So I would still have to lean toward Buffalo to win it all, yes.
Dad, looking around at the top offenses, and we mentioned one of them that's got a quarterback coming back from injury in the New York Jets that we expect to be markedly improved from last year. I think the same can be said for Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals. They're a team that's going to make a massive leap up and was able to hold steady for a while last year in the face of that injury. But when you look at the other teams that we'll take yards per play here, but most of the top offenses we were kind of familiar with last year. San Francisco, obviously we expect them to pick up where they left off, even though we're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk long term. They signed Juwan Jennings to a extension yesterday. I won't say a long-term deal, but added on a year to the deal there that's got 2 more on it. The Miami Dolphins we talked about, the Baltimore Ravens, Detroit Lions, Bills, Cowboys, Rams, Packers, Chiefs, and Seahawks. Those all look like offenses that we expect to pick up to some extent where they left off, Dad. Baltimore is one that I do think is fascinating. They have 3 pieces that'll at least be shouldering more of the load overall on the offensive line. You added Derrick Henry in that backfield. And the Lamar Jackson weight loss thing we talked about when you were gone, Dad. How much does that register for you in terms of him and continuing to kind of play with his body as he's now becoming a veteran player in this league?
As I said, he didn't get hurt running the ball. He got hurt in the pocket. So I'm not worried about him losing weight and taking off and running and people thinking he's going to get killed. Now, can he still take that shot when he's on the move? Yes, he can. But the weight loss doesn't mean anything to me. He's doing what he feels is right for his body. So I'm not concerned about it at all. They already had the top rushing attack, and now you lose some, but you bring in Derrick Henry, who now you actually have that threat on 3rd and 2 to run the ball, or 3rd and 3 instead of passing it, which like most NFL teams do, just give it to the hammer behind you. The one team interesting to me is not on that list, and it's because Burrow got hurt, is Cincinnati. Because Burrow is back, but both your top receivers aren't at OTAs now. And we never really worry about that, but you do have guys like Jamar Chase waiting for the extension. T. Higgins I heard you talk about the other day. He's the only one left. I think there were 9, and I think 8 signed deals, and are not playing on the franchise tag. T. Higgins is still the only one that hasn't done it. And we wondered when this was going to happen, right? You had Burrow, you had Chase, you had Higgins. You're going to have to pay them all at some point. Can you pay them all at some point? You certainly can pay Jamar Chase. You can keep T. Higgins on the franchise tag, so you can do that for this year and see where it goes. So I'd like to see all that get settled, because then I would think this offense could be in that top 10.
Yeah, I think the good news is they have all that time under task together, so them missing OTAs isn't really a death sentence by any stretch of the imagination. These are all things that we expected too, given how it's structured, given the fact that T. Higgins is a guy that's probably not happy to be on the franchise tag, said he wanted a trade, and so he's going to make them feel it this offseason. And the Jamar Chase thing is going to get done sooner than later, Dad. They've got no choice there, even for historically one of the cheapest franchises in sports.
I did say that wrong. I don't care about OTAs either. OTAs mean nothing to me. This was more about if those things linger. Now, I agree. I don't see T. Higgins drawing a line in the sand that says, I'm not playing on the franchise tag. I think he's going to. And I guess it would be more Jamar Chase. If he's not getting that deal, does he begin to hold out? Does it get to a holdout stage? Because you know my thoughts on that. When you get to especially the skilled position guys who, if they do end up holding out, then you flirt with that soft tissue injury when they come back. And does that end up being a lost season? I know I'm going far in advance here, but we've seen this story before. Want a new deal, don't get it, hold out for a while, come back, all of a sudden you got a hammy or you got a quad or you got a calf, and your season isn't what you wanted it to be. So I'm with you on OTAs. I don't give a damn about OTAs at all. It's just where it may go by the time we start the season.
I think if I were to be able to bestow upon one team the ultimate health token for this season where we just put the case over them and protect them, it would be the Cincinnati Bengals, because we just want to see what this thing can look like if you've got all those parts together one last time, because really for them, T. Higgins, this is a one-year Band-Aid and it's likely going to change next year. And for the 49ers, Dad, we know life's about to get very different for them. Those feel like two teams that are sitting on knife's edge walking into 2024 with that sense of urgency. I guess you could throw the Jets in there too by nature of Aaron Rodgers, but that seem to be all chips in the center of the table for this season. The Bengals are well positioned to go from beyond this. They made the change in the back end of the secondary last year. They've gotten new offensive linemen in there as well to protect Joe Burrow, and we think that they'll be able to lock down Jamar Chase and then supplement off of him once T. Higgins eventually has to move on, and having Joe gives you a chance. But all of those teams are going to change drastically in the coming season, and so 2024 feels massive for each of those offenses.
Yeah, because we always wanted to know who was that team that was going to knock off Kansas City. It was Cincinnati. They were the team, right? They went to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has beaten Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and they went to the Super Bowl losing that Super Bowl, but they got there, and we were like, wow, young players, look at how long this window is going to be open. But then, which is what happens in the NFL, because the one thing you can't predict is the injuries, and all of a sudden how that can bring you down. So, yeah, you'd love to see it with the talent they have for as long as you can hold that talent together.
As we're talking about the top offenses, those are ones that feel like they've got an extraordinary amount of this season pressure on them. The one I'm most excited to see, and I won't wear everyone out with this again because I've been beating the drum all offseason, is this Los Angeles Rams offense. As long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, this, I think, could end up being the best offense in the NFL. If you're just looking at the pieces involved, the play caller who's always been a step ahead in Sean McVay and what they were building on last year, Dad, would it shock you if they ended up as the best offense in the NFL, considering you're going to have a healthy Cooper Kupp, you're going to have a healthy Puka Nacua? I know right now Kyren Williams is out during OTAs, but expected to be ready by the time they get to training camp, and just continue to pour more resources into an offensive line that's going to move some parts around. Yeah, I know the Aaron Donald-less defense that's got these young guys in Fisk and Verse coming in to try and supplement what they had last year, but when the Rams got Stafford back healthy, that offense changed. Kyren Williams didn't even start all 17 games and was, I believe, second in the NFL in rushing or close to it in the top 5 last year. There's no reason they can't be the best offense in the NFL this season if all parts involved are healthy.
I agree. When you say all parts, I look at the O-line, and you would know better than me on that. That's the part of the offense that I would worry about, maybe some of the changes there.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Rams offensive line this offseason and the reorg that they went through here. Hold on, I'm trying to pull up the Rams depth chart right now. Dad, say something clever while I pull this up.
Oh, well, I have it up here. They left tackle Jackson, and then Jonah Jackson at left guard. Oh, Avila at center, Dotson at right guard, Havestein at right tackle.
So Rob's been there, obviously, but yeah, I think that's what gives me so much confidence on the inside is Steve Avila moving over to center. It's a position he played a little bit in college, and is just a big square body who had a great rookie season last year. Jonah Jackson's been one of my favorite, more underrated offensive linemen in the NFL during so much of his career in Detroit. And then Kevin Dotson was a guy that had a great season last year that got rewarded for it in Los Angeles. So you've got equal parts continuity, talent, and an influx of quality players in a group that was the forefront last year for this Rams team. Sean McVay every year seems to be looking for ways to reimagine his offense, to not stay stagnant, to do the thing that can be so tempting for teams that are good for a long time. And he decided, no, we're going to beat you up in the middle. We're going to run a bleep ton of duo. And then on the outside, they struck gold with Puka Nacua coming out of BYU. So I think they have all the makings and all the pieces of it. Certainly the incumbent in the 49ers and the Miami Dolphins and some of these teams we mentioned are still going to be great. But if we're looking at trajectory based on last year and then what they added this offseason, it's hard not to be high as hell on this Los Angeles Rams team, even though they've got to go toe-to-toe with the 49ers, who I still would probably pick, if you ask me right now, to win that division because of what they've got defensively versus the Los Angeles Rams that still need to answer some questions on that side of the ball before I'm going to fully write it off.
Yeah, you're in the lower half as far as defense, for the Rams. So, and now you lose Aaron Donald. So that's part, because you sit there and you match up against San Francisco. I'll give you the Rams offense, but the defenses don't compare, right? The defense for San Francisco is just stacked as opposed to the Rams. So that's the part of the ball to me that is going to have to make hay for that team.
An exciting season coming up already. We're just getting started. Juiced with some of the nuggets coming out of OTAs. But coming up next, a wild night for the New York Yankees and a wild start to the WNBA career of Caitlin Clark. We'll talk to a man and our buddy in Ryan Ruocco, who's been on the call to see both up close and personal and see what the outlook looks like heading into the rest of the 2024 season. Next on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And we've had a busy night in Major League Baseball. We've had an incredible start to the WNBA season. And so with those powers combined, we welcome in Ryan Ruocco, Yes Network and ESPN play-by-play announcer, and already clad in the new Golden State Valkyries gear. Buddy, you wasted no time getting geared up with one of the freshest new teams in the WNBA. Well done, sir.
Yeah, thank you, fellas. It's so good to be with you guys. Both of your beards look just excellent, by the way. I mean, truly fantastic. I almost as good as this shirt. I will say I expect great things from this organization just based on how well they have marketed thus far, and the gear they have sent out, and the logo and the colors. So I'm very excited to be rocking some Valkyries gear.
It's a great name. The one before that I've loved was the Kraken for Seattle. I thought was great, and I'm really hoping now that the Coyotes move to Utah that they go to the Utah Yeti. I want that to be the name of the Valkyries. Valkyries is a fantastic one. So let's start there as they're going to come into the WNBA, where they are now, and just all the talk of this class led by Caitlin Clark into the WNBA. And we've read so much about what the numbers associated with it. You have been right there smack dab in it, in the arenas that Caitlin Clark and some of these other young players have been in. How has it been feet on the ground there?
It's been amazing, Mike. It really has. the energy around this, it's just incredible. And I think, one of the stats that sort of exemplifies the boom that we're seeing, just take a look at the attendance for Indiana. As long as things go according to plan tonight and based on the tickets they've sold as well for Saturday, where Rebecca and Angel Gray and I will call Angel Reese and Caitlin's first game against each other, Chicago, Indiana, Saturday at noon. But based on where they're expecting the attendance to be for those first two games, for these next two games, Indiana is going to have had more fans to their first 5 home games this year than they had all 20 last year. And that is the Caitlin Clark effect that we have seen across the board. You see all these different arenas that are moving, or teams that are moving to bigger venues. And then we're also seeing that with Angel Reese and what's happening in Chicago, where you have opposing teams moving to bigger venues because of the appeal and the pull that she has. And then you have the play on the floor from these women. Caitlin's team obviously struggling mightily. We know some of that comes when you go to a team that, had the first pick in the draft. But she is doing things that we haven't seen before in the WNBA. And she's just adjusted. We've already seen her grow so much from her first couple of games, averaging 17, 6, and 5, coming off a game statistically that no rookie's ever done with her 35, 5, 3, 3 game. And then Angel Reese, her motor, I think, has translated to the pro level even better than people thought. And then also Kate Martin from Iowa, which she's done with the Las Vegas Aces, already becoming a rotation stalwart for the 2-time defending champs. And you've also had Cameron Brink in LA look like a no doubt about it first team all rookie player and somebody who's a future all-star. So I think all these players came with a following, and they have lived up to it. And we've seen the boom ratings-wise, attendance-wise, and then we've also seen the play on the floor back it up.
Yeah, I think that's been the interesting part is it's forced us to watch, because you're right, all those teams, you look at the Sky, the Sparks, and the Fever, they're all bunched together at the bottom of the standings right now. It's the usual suspects up top. The Connecticut Sun, the only undefeated team right now. The Aces waiting to get healthy with Chelsea Gray there. The Liberty right behind them. But you're watching the development on court, and you mentioned all of those players. We know you also, The Voice, and did a phenomenal job during March Madness in the women's tournament there and got to see Caitlin Clark at the height of her powers. What do you think's been the biggest adjustment for her in particular as she's come in with this big spotlight on her going into the W, working through some of this early growing pains?
I think probably the biggest adjustment is just, we saw 2 games in the tournament where she was guarded very physically and very tactically, West Virginia and UConn, where the game plan was, hey, we're going to basically trap every ball screen and we're going to try and push her right because Caitlin loves to go left. And now you have professionals doing that virtually every game she plays and guarding her 94 feet virtually every play of every game that she has played. And what I've liked is the first couple of games, there were times where she seemed overmatched by that physicality and incredibly frustrated. And I think in the last few games, what we've seen is her start to use that aggression to her advantage. It's something she mentioned to us a couple games into her career. She said, look, I kind of understand now some of how I'm going to be guarded. That aggression, obviously, it makes things difficult, but it also creates opportunities for me. And I think we see her going downhill a little bit more. I think we see her getting to the line a little bit more. She's probably still seeking out her 3 a little bit too much and is going to have to become more comfortable with that mid-range, with that in-between game so that it opens up the 3-point line for her more. But I think that's kind of what she is adjusting to now.
Ryan, I want to jump to baseball, obviously part of Yes Network as well, and what the Yankees have been doing, 4th in the league in average, tops of the league in home runs with Soto and Judge and Stanton. Do you still kind of cross your fingers, I would imagine, Yankee fans, hoping the injury bug doesn't hit because this team is on fire right now?
Yeah, Golic, that's spot on, because when you look at the way the lineup is constructed and the production they're getting, you really do feel like offensively, they have answers that they just haven't had during the Aaron Judge era, so to speak. And that's obviously because of Juan Soto, who is a generational talent who's going to go down as, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, who's still just 25 years old, and who I appreciate even more getting to watch him every day. When you just look at the quality of his at-bats, the fact that this is a guy who hits to all fields, who rarely ever leaves the strike zone, who I think also has set a tone for the team when it comes to just playing every day. This is a guy who doesn't want days off. There's no load management with Juan Soto. You don't have him in that lineup, he's not going to be happy. And that's something the Yankees have done as well. And I know Aaron Judge and other guys on the team have liked it as well. Aaron Boone, and health is a part of this, but he has had a very set lineup day in, day out, instead of, analytically switching things up every single day where a guy might be batting first one day, then eighth the next, then fifth the next. It's like, no, okay, hey, Volpe's going to lead off. He's been great. Soto's going to bat second. Judge is going to bat third. Then they've basically had Verdugo or Stanton clean up, depending on lefty-righty, and they've had just a whole lot of success. The lineup is dangerous. It is deep. They just got DJ LeMahieu back as well. If he plays anything like what he was the second half of last year, they get even deeper. So it's been pretty fun.
Only about a minute left here, Ryan, but the rotation also, sans Garrett Cole, has also been able to carry them through this. Who's helped them the most in his absence as the Yankees have continued to produce there?
Luis Gil. I mean, the whole rotation has been great. They just set a major league record, 16 straight games where they've gone at least 5 innings, allowing 2 runs or fewer, which is ridiculous when you think about it, to go through this rotation, have that happen without Cole a part of it, and with the starters they lost off last year's team. But Luis Gil right now is the Cy Young favorite for the American League. This was a guy who wasn't going to make the roster out of camp, and he's just been incredible. He's had 9 starts this season where he's allowed 3 hits or fewer. He's been ridiculous. Opponents are hitting 133 against him. So if you're going to look at one guy, it's definitely Gil, but the whole rotation has been excellent.
The Yankees being near the top is one of those things always feels good for baseball, and certainly despite a little wonky night last night with some early base running stuff, they cruised to another win in what's been a really fun season so far. Ryan, can't thank you enough for getting up with us, man. We appreciate your time. Enjoy all the great work, and we're excited to see you covering the Yankees on the call for more W action. It's been great stuff, brother.
Thank you, fellas. I'm expecting text messages about how I can get my facial hair to look as perfectly coiffed as yours.
Listen, you got the beautiful bald head already, so you're on the right side of history with me as far as that's concerned there. The beard's just a little bit of extra gravy on top of all that. We'll get you right, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic as we get set for Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals to see if the Minnesota Timberwolves can pull off the so far impossible in the NBA postseason of coming back from down 0-3. Delighted to be joined now by Timberwolves beat reporter for the Star Tribune up in Minneapolis, Chris Hine, jumping on with us here. And Chris, good morning. We appreciate the time. And what is the vibe, I guess, around town right now, looking at this, what has so far been insurmountable task in front of the Timberwolves?
Yeah, I think it's hopeful, in a way that's, I don't want to say naive, but kind of endearing. I think everybody, after Game 2 had I think an existential crisis in the fan base after Luka Doncic hits the three at the end of the game, and now when you go through the kind of the stages of grief, right, you come to like an acceptance bargaining phase. Maybe we're in that right now with the fan base. So we'll see what happens tonight. I still think if these games come down to late game situations, I like Dallas to eventually pull it out, obviously. But if the Wolves can trounce the Mavericks the way they trounced Denver in Game 6 of the previous series, I think they have a chance of maybe getting this to 7 games.
So before we get to the inevitable of them losing and being out of the playoffs and talking about that, because I just don't think they're going to come back. I don't think any of us do. But if they're to get to this win tonight, what player outside of the players you expect, obviously Cat and Anthony Edwards, who has to step up the most?
I think it's probably somebody like Naz Reid, who had a big Game 2, but he really provides instant offense, and that's been hard for them to come by in this series. Dallas's defense has really made things hard for them. Even in Game 4, the Wolves were struggling to find a rhythm, but the absence of Derek Lively maybe opened some things up for them inside a little bit. And Naz Reid really gets the crowd going at home. He's a fan favorite. Ever since he got here, that the fan base has had this attachment to him, and nobody, outside of maybe Anthony Edwards, can amp up the building here and get the environment going in Minnesota quite like Naz Reid. So another little boomlet like he had in Game 2 when he hit 7 threes, even a smaller scale one than that should do enough to provide a little juice in the building tonight.
Speaking of someone that finally got hot from 3, Karl Anthony Towns has been an oft-debated member of this team, and really during his entire Timberwolves tenure, he finally gets the three-point shot going, especially late. But, Chris, is there a feeling that this is kind of the most that you're going to get from Karl Anthony Towns, and is that going to be enough? Can he be the legitimate number 2 next to Anthony Edwards that carries this team into the future based on what we've seen?
I think that's the big debate right now. But they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Karl Anthony Towns and some of the games that he played in that Phoenix series and some of the games he played in that Denver series, especially Game 7 when Ant was struggling. Karl was the only one that was really scoring, especially in the first half of that game. Success in the playoffs, a lot of times just boils down to consistency. And how consistent can you be the type of all-star player that you've shown yourself to be? Now, unfortunately for the Wolves in this series so far, Karl has struggled shooting, Ant has struggled shooting, and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving have been consistently the better version of themselves than a night like Game 4 when they were off a little bit. So it's all about finding that rhythm and that consistency. I thought Karl's shot in Game 3, that was about as down as I've seen his shot all season, and in a lot of years of covering him. The first 3 he took in that game wasn't even close from what I remember. And you kind of knew you were in for a long night. But all credit to him for bouncing back in Game 4 when, he could have gone in the tank and had another night like the other night. But he bounced back and gave them what they needed to keep their season alive.
The thing about it is Minnesota hasn't been yearly in the playoffs to be inconsistent to say, okay, time to make a change, right? So if this doesn't go their way, which again, it's never happened before, and eventually the season does end, I'd be hard pressed to think, oh yeah, time to break this team up. That would seem ridiculous to say. But on the other side of that, what would be, is it possible, what piece maybe that you could bring in, or is it just we run it back, we keep living with this team here and just, hope that through the experience this year in the playoffs helps them going down the road?
I think to answer that question, it's important to understand who's running the team, and that's Tim Connolly. And the approach that he took in Denver for all those years was always one of patience and letting the roster that he put in place kind of marinate and grow together, even in the face of people saying he should have traded Jamal Murray or tried to, get a bigger name veteran, a more proven track record. And he stuck by his guns and kept that core together. And last year it ended up winning a title. So I think that's the lesson here, is I think when you look at who's running the Wolves, who's making the decisions, it's somebody who tends to get a group of guys together, let them build that chemistry, let them develop in the playoffs, let them get a couple scars maybe along the way. And then eventually it could turn into something really good. I think that's going to be the mantra going forward here for Minnesota, and not so much, oh, Carl had a bad week against Dallas, so let's try to trade him here.
That ability to ignore the outside noise, it can be pretty difficult even for the best. It's made a lot easier by the presence of someone like an Anthony Edwards, who's been such a revelation, really seems to have made the star turn, so much so that I saw the announcement from you the other day on Twitter that you're getting ready to write the Anthony Edwards biography coming up this offseason. So I don't know if a lot of people are used to a biography for a 22-year-old who seems to be just at the beginning of his star turn. So what made right now the right time for this?
That's probably a better question for my publisher. They're the ones that agreed to do it, HarperCollins. But I think because his life story is so unique, and he is such a unique player and presence on the NBA scene, I think people want to know a little more about him. People know a lot about him locally here in Minnesota. We've all written a lot of stories about him, obviously, and people know him from Atlanta, where he grew up. But on a national scale, it really feels like this is the first time people are really getting to know Anthony Edwards. And he has a backstory in which he, overcame the death of his mother and grandmother about 9 months apart when he was a teenager. He was a football star once upon a time. That's how he made his name in Atlanta. And he kind of transitioned to basketball, during his teenage years, and he just took off when he made the transition. So there's a lot to his story, and I think an uplifting story, I think, in the end, because of the people around him that helped him get to where he is, and the way he just keeps improving and every year that he's in the NBA.
As the older players on the teams that aren't in it, Steph, LeBron, Kevin Durant, are on their way out, is he now, or very soon, is Anthony Edwards going to be considered the face of the NBA?
I think he's got a chance, but I think ultimately when you have these discussions about who's going to be the face of the league, they tend to figure themselves out, because it's going to be who wins eventually. You can't be the face of the league if you're not making consistently deep playoff runs and winning championships, I feel like, at least. So a lot of this discussion, I think he's got the personality, the charisma, certainly the highlights that go viral on social media, the quotes, what the press conference moments, he's got all that, right? I think the last piece that you need to be the face of the league is you need to win. So at 22 years old, the track record of leading a team to titles is a little spotty. It usually takes a few more years in the NBA. I don't think Steph and LeBron, for instance, each won their first titles until they were 27. So even for superstars like that, it can take a while for them to finally get to that point in their careers. So Anthony Edwards at 22, making the conference finals at 22 years old is already a hell of an accomplishment. So we'll see what happens in years to come, because I think with each year, he learns a little bit more about the game and becomes that much smarter, in addition to his already great physical talents.
Well, we're all a lot smarter about this now as we head into Game 5, thanks to Chris Hine. Again, at Christopher Hine on Twitter is where you can check him out. Plenty of great stuff, doing a great job for the Star Tribune there. So, Chris, thank you for the time. Enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
And go Irish, by the way. Chris, proud Notre Dame graduate, because we've always got to throw some Notre Dame propaganda in here. Anthony Edwards and company going to get ready for Game 5. Coming up next, we will get you ready for the end of the show with This, That, and the Third here on Gojo and Golic. right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern when you can on the DraftKings Network. The best of Gojo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you have to miss us in either of those two spots or any of our great guests, thank you to the Star Tribune's own Chris Hine, who joined us in the last segment to talk about the Timberwolves here. The Yes Network and ESPN play-by-play announcer Ryan Ruocco for stopping by to talk WNBA and Major League Baseball. If you missed any of that, make sure you get it wherever you get your podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. And want to start off with this. I know we, in the last couple of days, hadn't touched on it, but Dad, big news out of Major League Baseball as the announcement came that they would be incorporating the Negro League statistics into the MLB record books here, which would make Josh Gibson Major League Baseball's now career leader with a .732 batting average, surpassing Ty Cobb and taking over in a number of other statistical categories as some of the all-time greats that were once shunned and kept out of Major League Baseball because of their color are now, Dad, I believe rightly allowed to have their names listed alongside the other all-time greats that they are absolutely a part of in the sport's history.
Yeah, Rob Manfred said it's a show of respect for great players who performed in the Negro Leagues due to circumstances beyond their control. Yeah, you think? And once those circumstances changed, demonstrated that they were truly major leaguers. And what prompted this comes from John Thorne, MLB's official historian. He said the condensed 60-game season for the 2020 calendar year because of COVID for the National League and American League prompted us to think that maybe the shortened Negro League seasons could come under the Major League Baseball umbrella. So they kept things the same for the season leaders for the Negro League as other leagues, 3.1 plate appearances or 1 inning for each game played by a player's team. So those stats are the same. But this is long overdue, Mike. I mean, the amount of great players that, again, due to circumstances beyond their control, I would say so. We've seen so many great African-American players in Major League Baseball that I'm glad this finally happened. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, anyone wasting air or headspace getting upset about this for any of the number of reasons is usually telling on themselves. And in this case, pretty loudly here. I saw our buddy Paul Hembekides over at ESPN point out yesterday and illustrate statistically from 1949 to 1962, 11 of the 14 MVPs in the National League were black players. There were great players all along that were forced out and away from Major League Baseball wrongly for so long, but that doesn't mean that that was a lesser product. That doesn't mean that something that shouldn't be considered alongside of Major League Baseball. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So an egregious wrong, it's never going to be fully righted. But, Dad, kudos to Major League Baseball for looking at this situation. This is not always a league that we look at and say is the most progressive or forward thinking when it comes to how they position themselves. And in this case, absolutely finding themselves now, at least in this case, more on the right side of history than they had been, obviously.
I guess the best line I could say is better late than never, right? That they finally got to where it should be.
Yes, and so now a bunch of people are going to spend time looking back at some of the great players whose names maybe hadn't been considered or talked about as much in popular discourse. Were known by many, obviously. Plenty of people understand and appreciate the history of the Negro Leagues, but to shine a spotlight on some of these names even more and to give some modern baseball fans a better chance at knowing and understanding them is a great byproduct of something that you're absolutely right is better late than never. Speaking of better late than never, Emerson, let's get to that. We have even more hype. The hype train continues to build momentum, Dad, for the NCAA sports college football video game that's getting ready to pop off this summer.
Yeah, sources are telling me that Gojo's all hyped up, that other people got to play a video game this week. So NCAA 25 was tested by a few selected reporters. The reviews are in. Gojo, what did you learn? What questions do you still have? You tell me here. Your dad looks thrilled.
Yeah, he looks absolutely thrilled. I was thrilled because I got to see a bunch of my college football friends, Matt Brown, a friend of this program and Extra Points newsletter, Bud Elliott over at 24/7 Sports. All of them got to go down and play the video game and do a little tutorial. And, Dad, it's rare in this day and age in the world of sports where so much of the business seems to be just that, something that operates with only dollars and cents in mind, only the bottom line and profit margin in line. And that's even true for the structure of college football itself lately. And the best review I saw from Matt and others is this is a game that is made by and for college football fans. It incorporates so many of the great traditions of the sport into the gameplay there. They've tweaked it so it's not just Madden reimagined with some different skins on top. And if you're a true college football diehard and someone that wants to live the sport year round, this seems like this game is going to be a great opportunity to do just that.
Some of the guys that played it, their thoughts when asked what stood out. I thought the ability to do the pass rush moves with the right trigger was pretty useful. There's also a real different reason why you might want to play defense, want to play every level of the defense. The kicking controls are new, and it makes sense. The first game I played, I had like a 7-yard punt shank. I did that in my Ohio All-Star game when I punted one into the stands at about 7 yards. So that does happen. Listen, I am happy for everybody. I don't play these games. I did play, and I don't sit there and the old man on the porch say I never played video games. I played video games, but I never really played the football games, the soccer games, and the team games like that. It was always different kind of video games. But I know people love this. I know there was the era where players were bringing these games on the road and playing them in the hotel rooms. I get how big it is, so I'm certainly not going to poo-poo it. Plenty of people love this. I hope you enjoyed it. It's just not something that I am into, but I'm glad that I know one thing you'll always look for in a video game is how realistic it is, right? And from all signs, Mike, it certainly points that this one is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be great for so many people. Distance made the heart grow fonder on this one, right? We understand why the video game had to go away for so long. It was a real, I think, tip of the spear part of the change that we're seeing now, the ripple effects of this and athlete rights overall in the sport coming to the forefront of the conversation. But now to get to a point where we can get it back in a way that, hey, is it perfect in terms of the athlete conversation? No, it's compensation. No, it's probably not ever going to be perfect, but it's close enough to where we now all get to enjoy this thing that you're right. I didn't appreciate in real time when we had it back in 2014. I was a first-person shooter player. I was someone that was so busy playing the sport myself that I didn't bother playing the video game as much as I should have. And now we get to go back and have a chance, Emerson, to honor those people that missed out on their opportunity to be a part of this game. I've seen a lot of folks saying it, and I think I will join in the chorus of people that I'm going to take a knee, take that delay of game to start my first game in the new version of this to honor all of those that lost their place in this game over the sands of time.
Yep. No one could beat me with Eric Crouch in Nebraska back, I think it was NCAA 2002. No one could beat me.
Wow.
Running that option.
There we go. You know what? We'll have a chance to try it out this summer. That's the thing. Finding which offense you're going to run, figuring out if you want to be an option team. The Kansas Jayhawks, I'd imagine, are going to be very popular with Lance Leipold's playbook there. So tons of stuff we get to look forward to here. Let's finish off on the dumbest note humanly possible, Emerson.
Yeah.
A viral video from yesterday that took center stage of one man signing quite literally his own warrant to go back to jail.
Yeah, Michigan man Corey Harris probably thought he was doing the right thing when he dialed into a court Zoom call for his case about driving on a suspended license. There was just one problem.
Mr. Harris, are you driving?
Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
All right. What are we doing?
Your Honor, we are respectfully requesting an adjournment in this matter, up possibly 2 to 4 weeks if the court would allow.
Okay. So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving. And he didn't have a license.
Oh. You can't do it. You can't do that.
The dude's face driving just like...
He was told to turn himself into jail that night. He had to show up at 6.
Driving with the suspended license, without a license here, thinking he's doing everyone a favor by being safe and making sure he gets pulled into the doctor's parking lot before it's too late there. If we think that if you think that we've done you guys a favor showing you dumbass videos like this, download, subscribe, rate, review our show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Thanks, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.